Welcome all of you in SST College of Arts and Commerce. This is SST Edupedia. I am Assistant Professor Deepak Gavade. Today we are going to learn a topic, short story. That is elements of short story from communication skills in English 2, subject of FYBA. So let's learn. In this lecture we will learn what is short story and what are the 5 elements of short story in detail. After watching this, you will be able to understand short story, the elements of short story, and you can write your own short story. So let's start with what is a short story. Till today you might have come across to this word short story, or you might have read different short stories also. But what actually short story is? A short story is a piece of prose fiction that can be read in a single sitting and focuses on a self-contained incidents or series of linked incidents with the intent of evoking single mood or effect. So from this definition you come to know that what actually short story is. Means you can read it in a single sitting, it's very short. If we consider the words in a short story, it may be 1000 to 4000 words maximum, and you can read it in single sitting, as well as the incidents, those are linked incidents, series of linked incidents with a single mood or single effect. So that is the short story. Now let's move ahead and try to understand what are the 5 elements in short story. The first element is characters, the second one is setting, third is conflict, fourth element is theme, and fifth element is plot. Now one by one we will try to understand these elements. So let's understand the very first element in short story, that is characters. Now what is character? A character is a person or sometimes an animal who takes part in the action of a short story or other literary work. Now characters and how we get to know them. When we read the short story, any short story, how we come to know that it is about the character? So it may be through the author's physical description of them. The author is describing the character through the words, physical description of that particular character. Then sometimes we come to know about the character through their actions, sometimes through their words, means dialogue. The character speaks something and we come to know that which character is it. Then through their inner thoughts we come to know, through what other characters say and think about them. So we come to know about these characters. So the main element, very first element of the short story is character. So there are few characters in a short story and those characters are elaborated in the short story. The second important element of a short story is setting. Now what actually setting means, or what is setting is? So setting is the time and place that story occurs, when that story is taking place, where that story is taking place. So a writer often use description of landscape to describe the setting. Sometimes there may be some scenery, some buildings, some particular seasons or weather. So it is explained through words. So it is the style of the writer, how the writer is explaining the setting in the short story. Then next element of any short story, that is theme. Theme is the meaning behind events and characters' actions in a story. As well as the theme means what? It is the central idea or the message or purpose of the story. Every short story is having a theme. It is based on that particular theme, or the story revolves around that particular theme, that central idea. A theme can be expressed as a general statement about people or life, but remember, it is not plot summary. It can be either directly or indirectly stated by the author, and sometimes or the most of the times it is indirect. So theme is one of the element of short story. After theme, the another element of short story is conflict. Conflict means the problem or the challenges or the difficulties faced by the character. The character encounters certain problems in the short story, that is called as a conflict, and it is the struggle between two people or things in a short story. Like a main character is on one side of the main conflict, so sometimes there may be the main character like the protagonist, and against that protagonist antagonist is there, is the villain of the story, like hero of the story and the villain of the story, and the conflict between them. And these conflicts can be of two types: external conflict and internal conflict. So external conflict, conflict with others, or sometimes the conflict with nature. Our internal conflict means conflict within themselves, the characters inside. Then the main characters may struggle against another important character, or sometimes against nature, sometimes against the society, or sometimes inside himself or herself, means certain feelings, the conflict of the character with feelings, emotions, or some illness. So these are the types of conflicts, which is the main element of a short story. Then comes the next element of short story, that is plot. Now what actually plot means? Plot is a pattern of events that develop from the interactions between characters. Means interaction means with the dialogues. The plot can be developed through the dialogue, through the description, narration given by the writer or the character. Or a plot is a series of events and characters' actions that relate to the central conflict. Now again, there are 5 elements of plot. The very first element is exposition, the second one is rising action, third is climax, fourth is falling action, and fifth is conclusion. Now let's try to understand these elements of plot through this diagram, that how it reaches to the climax and then the falling action and the conclusion. Now one by one we will discuss it. The very first characteristic of this plot is exposition, the first type, exposition. Now what is exposition? It is the start or introduction of the story. The plot begins, the story begins. So exposition means the beginning. Then the background information that the reader must have in order to understand the story, which is provided in the beginning of the story. This is where characters and settings are introduced. Means at the initial part of the story, everything is introduced to the reader. So that is the exposition part of the plot. Then rising action. So all the events that take place leading up to the climax, all the events are called as rising action. So this is where the reader is introduced to the conflict. So the next type of plot, that is climax, which is very interesting part in any story, the most exciting part. It may be called as the turning point. Here the story is turned in a different direction towards the conclusion, and then comes falling action. Falling action means the immediate reaction to the climax, which is called as falling action. So all the actions that occur after the climax and before the conclusion of the story are called as falling action. And now comes the last part of that particular plot, that is a resolution, the conclusion of the plot. Here the loose ends are tied up and there might not be a clear resolution, and this is called a cliffhanger ending. Means here the story ends. So the story is concluded here. So likewise, in this lecture we come to know that what actually a short story is, what are the 5 elements of short story. If you are willing to write a short story, you can start now with the help of these elements. Let's begin to write a short story. Thank you for watching.